Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street, and I can't wait to share this episode with you. Welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. Today, I am so pleased to have with me the unstoppable Kelly Roach. I have been part of Kelly's membership community for the last couple of years. And when I talk about Kelly's community, I am talking about a wide range of amazing brands that she has started and owned. And her parent company, Kelly Roach International, has recently been recognized by Inc. 5000. And her podcast, The Kelly Roach Show, is #1 now on the charts in the US for entrepreneurship. So thank you so much for being here with me today, Kelly.
I'm so happy to be here, Rachel.
Yeah. So among all of the different brands that you have started to co-own and own, the one that I really want to focus on today is the one that you started with your partner, Amy Klein, and the Give Her Courage movement that you guys started and the Courageous brand. It is just so up my alley with the performance apparel that you guys have been developing. But can you tell us a little bit about the movement and the brand before we get into it?
Yeah, definitely. Well, so Amy and I have been best friends since college. And after we both graduated, we kind of both went into our corporate careers. We went our separate ways, always stayed in touch, always stayed friends. She began to have immense success in corporate. I did too. So we both just saw our careers grow and grow and grow. And, as we were kind of talking through things, talking about life, talking about family, all of these things, this theme kept coming up for us, about the mentorship that girls and women really need. And it was really interesting because both of us had worked in a corporate environment and kind of climbed the corporate ladder. And all of our mentors, the people that really embraced us and helped us, were men. Mm-hmm. And, in the corporate world, it's a little different than the entrepreneurial world, where yes, a lot of women still don't recognize that there's room for everyone at the top. And so we were we need to send the elevator back down and give back and create something that's really just focused on instilling the beliefs and mindset in young girls that are going to carry them through life. And we were talking about what is it that's the difference, right? Because it's not talent, it's not capability. There's lots of smart people in the world. There's lots of people that did really well in school. There's lots of people that had an advantage from their parents. And when we really looked at it and we were like, why was she successful and why was I successful? It really came down to courage and confidence. It's believing in yourself. It's having good self-worth. It's having the courage to take calculated risks. It's having the confidence to follow through, even when things don't go well in the beginning, even when it's a long journey with a lot of high highs and a lot of low lows. And we really saw that there's so much in the personal development space for adults. And there's so much in the personal development space for business owners. And what's so interesting is by the age of 8, basically your psyche is formed, your personality is formed, your self-worth is formed, your belief set and your lens through which you see the world is completely developed. And so we were like, you know what, we're going to start a brand that's totally dedicated to developing courage and confidence, starting with girls that are, in that developmental phase, right? 6, 7, 8 years old. And we wanted it to have two sides to it. We wanted it to be, of course, the component of education, which is why we have the Courage Academy and, the Launchpad and all of those things that are focused around how do we teach self-worth, self-belief, confidence, courage, communication skills, leadership. That's our educational arm of the business. But we also wanted to have a wearable sign of courage, something that women and girls could put on and feel confident and feel strong. And also, as you mentioned already, it's primarily an athletic line because we want to encourage movement. We want to encourage taking care of yourself, being active, again, which goes hand in hand, obviously, with self-worth and belief and all of those things. So here we are.
Amazing. It's such a good cause. I just think that is so beautiful. And I'd love to just start asking, when you go online and you start searching on Google, how do I start an apparel brand? Over 90% of the information that's out there is about drop shipping and merchandising and buying blanks and putting a screen print on it. And I really want to kind of dig into, you guys decided to do an entirely custom proprietary apparel brand from scratch. And I'm just curious, like, how did you guys come to that conclusion? How do you know that that was the way?
Yeah. Well, I will just say I am humble enough to admit that like we literally made every decision wrong except I will say here's what we did right. What we did right was we were obsessed with the quality of what we were doing. And the reason why we went totally custom is that we wanted ethically sourced material, we wanted recyclable material, and we wanted really soft, long-lasting, high-quality material, which is why we did not want to do, this like slap it on, drop ship, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I'm very proud of that decision. And the stuff that we've created is so high quality. And like, I'm super proud of those decisions and the why behind it. But we made so many mistakes. Like literally for two very smart business people, we made every mistake you could possibly think of, including the fact that we went to market with an entire line of products. We have like 30 products when we have two clear best sellers. And what we should have done is going to market with one product, sell it out, build the brand. Like that is absolutely like such a obvious and clear learning, but it is such mixed messaging that you get out there. And you're right. Like most of the information is about drop shipping. And the problem with that is like you have no quality control, number one. And also number two, it's very hard to build a distinct brand when you're just like white labeling something, or you're just like taking a product and like putting like a logo on it or putting a design on it. You're a lot of times the material isn't the quality that you want. It's just not. I think if it's something that you're really invested in, I think that going the custom route is really smart. I will say another thing that I would have done differently, and I'm probably getting a little ahead. So I'll share
That's
this
okay.
and then
No,
I'll
you're
pause
good.
and you can
Keep
just
going.
ask me questions.
Nope, keep going.
So huge mistake was going to market with a full line, like huge mistake. If I were to do it over, I would 100% only go to market with one thing. And we had very clear bestsellers like right from the start, and we should have just focused on that. So that's number one. Number two, I do think going custom, if a big focus of yours is like building a unique and distinct brand and you really care about your brand, I do think going custom is the right route, because like us, when you wear things like you can wash our leggings. I wear our leggings all the time. You could literally wash them 100 times and they still look beautiful and they're comfortable and they don't pill and they're good quality and they're still have the elastic in them. So we accomplished what we wanted to. What I probably would change with that one thing is I probably would use a shortcut to do the testing on the design and then go back and do the fully custom product. So like do a drop ship design to see if we were getting the response to like the look, the material, like whatever, and then go back and go through the process of fully customizing again once we had proof of concept.
Yeah, that's super smart, because I think there are so many brands. I've been starting to talk to a lot of different people who are they're feeling really disheartened about their brand because they got it out there. They went through all of this work, they spent all of this money, and now it's out there and it wasn't really what their customers wanted. And so they weren't able to test that up front because there's so much work that you just dive right into. And so I think that's a really smart idea.
Yeah, I mean, because listen, like if you're going to do the custom product, then you are putting your hands on the quality of material and you can show it to people and you can have people try it on and hold it in their hand and whatever. So like you can get that feedback. But the thing that you need like market feedback, like broad-based market feedback on is like the design, like the look of it, like are people responding to it? And I do think there's some shortcuts that you can do for that, because I mean, it can be a 12-month plus process. I mean, it's like stick a needle in your eye, like literally.
It can't be, yes.
Oh my gosh, to get the samples, and then you have to refine the samples. But then if you want to change something after you're in the sample process, every time you want to change something, it's adding another 4 to 6 months to your process. And so, yeah, it's very interesting. And I think definitely that's why being really high intent with a singular product. And to your point where you're saying people are getting discouraged, you really have to test the market first
Yeah.
before you go and even go into the process of samples, because that alone is countless hours of work and countless, investment. Vet the market first, get the market response. That's why I said, like, use a shortcut to get through the testing, and then go back and produce your fully custom product.
Yeah, what's coming up for me, there are a couple of brands out there, and something that I've definitely been advocating for is 3D design when it comes to
Yeah.
apparel development. We've been seeing this huge surge in 3D rendering of apparel, and it looks beautiful. It almost looks real life. And there are so many cool ways that you can use that now through AI. And start, marketing that, start putting it out there, and starting to see, just testing it, like Kelly's saying, like getting an idea of what your
100%.
customers will want. And you are literally only spending money on possibly a 3D rendering company to help you with that, instead of starting with fabric resources and finding a manufacturer and all of that good stuff. So yeah, it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's super
I think,
smart.
yeah, you've mentioned timeline, and I will say, even since the beginning of my career, when I was like an intern, a baby intern sitting in corporate desks, the number one thing that people complain about is timeline in the apparel industry. And even to this day, when I talk to potential new clients, the one thing that always comes up is we want to go faster. We want to move faster. We want this to be to market in 3 to 4 months. And when I'm out there telling them, I could probably get it done for you in 9 months, but let's plan on a year. We get a lot of people who really say, I've got someone over here who tells me they can do it faster, so we're gonna go over here. And a lot of the times we have those people now starting to come back to us to say that didn't work.
It's impossible.
So what were you saying?
I mean, it's impossible. You can't, if you're really serious about producing your product the right way, like a year is like, that's pretty fast, actually, because like I said, anytime you have any change to your samples, any small tweak, and listen, it may look perfect on paper. You see it, you're in love, right? And then you get it and you're like, oh man, this is not, I can't go, your heart is just like, I can't do it. You're going to add 3 to 4 months. And it's just like anything. Think about website design. When you go through website design, you get the initial design, and typically there's going to be 3 to 5 revisions before you settle on the final concept and then bring it to market. And the same thing goes for, design of merchandise. So you have to understand that, especially because many times we did a lot of product that was in US, but we also had to deal with vendors that were overseas. Now, when you start dealing with vendors that are overseas, now you're dealing with ports, you're dealing with tariffs, you're dealing with things that have nothing to do with you and have nothing to do with the vendor, that sometimes can extend your timeline by 3 months at a time.
Yeah.
And so any change in the process is typically going to add a couple months to the process. So yeah, I would say a year is very generous. If you can get people to market in a year, like, that's phenomenal. And I think the thing is like, there's just a lot of misconceptions about all the steps that go into the process, right?
Yeah. Agreed. And I think it kind of goes back to almost all that information that you're seeing online, where, drop shipping can be done in 3 to 4 months, or merchandising white label can be done in 3 to 4 months. But that's not really the same as, drawing something, coming up with a concept in your head, and then figuring out how to get it like physically made.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, the thing is it's the quality of the product, right? And it's the desirability of, like, people wanting to be repeat customers. Like, in order to have a really successful apparel business, you want people that are going to buy from you again and again. So if you just quickly drop ship or white label something because they buy it because they think it's cute, but then they get it, and after a couple washes, it's falling apart. Yeah, you made that sale, but you just lost a customer. So these are the kinds of things that people don't realize are, like, very, very important decisions in the process.
Yeah. And we talk a lot about how, like, customer loyalty also comes through fit. We're experts at fitting performance apparel. Me and my team, like, we've been doing it for a collective 55 years. And it's something that we talk about constantly. Like, if you are not perfecting your fit, especially for a body in motion, like if your clothes are uncomfortable on someone doing a sport and they're thinking about their clothes instead of how they're performing, like, you've done
They'll
something
never,
wrong.
yeah, they'll never buy from your brand again. Yeah.
Yeah. And without that, like you will not have repeat customers and your brand will struggle for sure. So I love that
I
point.
totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. One of the questions I am most curious to ask you about, as someone who came into the apparel world kind of fresh and brand new into this process, what were some of the things that surprised you as you started to work? I assume you guys started to work with the development team and they brought you into fittings and had you review some of the samples. Like, what were some of the things that maybe you didn't expect and surprised you? Are you frustrated by feeling like an outsider in your own industry? You're not alone. I spent years feeling the same way. Are you tired of endless research and you can only learn this stuff by getting a job in fashion advice? Me too. That's why I created the Business of Apparel online course. My years of insider knowledge condensed into video tutorials, demos, and downloads. Learn at your own pace, no fluff. Just key topics like building target profiles and mastering financials. This information is genuinely unavailable anywhere else. Grow your brand, become an apparel industry aficionado, and unlock millions in potential revenue. The value? Over $50,000 with millions potential for your brand. Don't miss out. Sign up for the Business of Apparel online course today at thebusinessofapparel.com/course.
Well, I mean, I think like obviously for me, I came from building businesses in the service world, right? I'd scaled companies. I worked in large scale Fortune 500. So like I am not a new, this isn't my first rodeo, but I was shocked by the lack of control that you have over the process and the timeline. And it's because you're working with outside vendors and you really can't do it in-house. Like this is not something where you're like, oh, I'll just do it myself. Like you can't.
Right.
You can't.
No.
Like it's not a choice, right? So number one, that was very difficult for me personally because I'm fanatical about like what I want my customer experience to be, what I want the the product to be, all of that. So number one is like the lack of control. That really surprised me. And number two is the time. I mean, I'm the kind, I would probably be the customer, like you said earlier, that's like, no, I will not take a year to do this product. It must be in 6 months. And I'm sure that was probably Amy and I's response when, we started the process. And then we learned very quickly, like, you can say you want it to be as fast as you want. Like you're dealing with 6 different people that have to be coordinated in this process in order to get this product to market. So, yeah. So I think the timeline and the lack of control that you have over process. And I think being prepared for that is really important. I've talked about this very openly as well. Like, you have to invest up front, in inventory. And, I think the problem and I will say, so here's 2 other, this episode is going to be so full of gold for people of all my mistakes.
Juicy. Yes.
Okay. So 2 other big mistakes that I made. Number one, I have a background in selling to corporate. I sold to corporate my entire career before I started my own business. I wish to God that I had focused on going wholesale, like right from the beginning. And what we should have been doing during that entire process, going through samples, waiting for shipment, is we should have been building our corporate pipeline. We should have been, meeting with vendors. We should have been getting wholesale deals, because when we got those samples in hand, there's still tremendous time between getting samples in hand and getting the product that, we could have gotten deals done. So I would give a huge recommendation to everyone that make good use of that timeline. Get that final sample in your hand and then use every second that you possibly can to get out there, meet with vendors, get your product in front of buyers, get scheduled meetings, and get some wholesale deals done. So that was another big mistake that I made. And the other big mistake was I did not realize, or we did not realize up front. I think we invested like $300,000 up front in inventory, because there's pricing quantities. And if you buy the smallest pricing quantity, you spend so much per product that you can't price the product at a level that you can make a profit on it.
Exactly.
So we had no understanding of these different levels of pricing that go with certain quantities, where like you can't just buy the minimum amount of inventory because you'll lose money on every single thing that you sell, because it's it's very different in apparel than it
Yes.
is in like a service-based business. Like in a service-based business, for example, like I decided I was like, I'm going to be at the 75th percentile or above in my pricing tier. So like I built a very upscale boutique, like high-end coaching consulting company, very high touch, all of those things. Great. Like you can just decide that you're going to do that. But in retail, you can't just decide that you're going to charge $120 for a t-shirt when you have no brand reputation, right?
Right.
You have to, you have to have a certain name and brand in order to do that. So the other thing to recognize is when you're planning to take your product to market, you have to look at the quantity that you're going to invest in to get the price per unit down enough to be able to sell it at a price point that you can sell it at and still make a profit. So that's number one. But the
Yep.
big lesson and the more important lesson of it is, I think a lot of people, and we did not plan appropriately for this either, was that you have to have a separate budget. Like you can't put all your money into investing in product and then
Yep.
forget about the fact that you have to then have so much more beyond that to put into advertising that product. And it took us, I think, I'm going to say it took us 6 months at least of advertising to get our ads converting past the break even point, meaning
Wow.
that
Yeah.
we crossed over to the point of we can run ads and actually make a profit on a sale. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing, people hear that and they're like, 6 months, that's insane. I would never do that. That's how long it's going to take. That is how long it's going to take. And so you have to have a huge budget for advertising, and you have to have a separate budget for taking your product to market, then the budget for creating the product, and that whole process. So hopefully my mistakes, Rachel, can serve everyone here. And don't do what I did. I mean, luckily for us, we're just like, we're animals. Like we're both like, such invested business people that like we didn't give up, and we were like, okay, we know the
Yeah.
mistakes that we made, we corrected them, we move forward, we're doing what we're doing, it's working. So we got past it. But for a lot of people, like if they made all the mistakes that we made, they would be done, they'd be
Yeah.
completely done. So I would just say for everybody listening, like use my mistakes as a learning. You don't need to make any of the same mistakes I did, and it will save you a lot of stress and get you much quicker to where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been working with a couple of other consultants in the space to kind of start recommending, like what is the upfront budget that someone should have
Yeah.
on hand if they're thinking about starting an apparel line. And we've kind of landed around the 150K mark. And there are a
At
lot of little
least.
caveats to that, right? It's about having budget up front to hire the right kind of team who can make you quality apparel. And then it's about, what kind of inventory do you want to buy up front? And exactly like you said, like how do we start with the first one or two products that are really going to like fly off the shelves for you? Allow those products to start making you a profit and then start feeding that into new ideas. And with that, like even with that, still needing 150K up front is probably as tight as you can make it.
Yeah, I would say that's as tight. I mean, that's you're a really savvy business person if you can get an apparel brand off the ground for 150,000. I'll say that. Yeah.
I think so too. Yeah. And it really does take some fundraising right up front and making sure that, we've been talking a lot about, how do you bootstrap something like that? And, we're recommending to some people, are there ways that you can start online businesses? Is there something that you can teach or some way that you can consult, or can you start a side hustle of your own so that you can raise that money and then put it into this dream apparel line that you want to build? And that's really gotten some people pretty jazzed. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, that's the biggest piece of advice that I would give is that like, I think you can course correct in a service-based business a lot more quickly than you can in an apparel brand. So I think it's just really, really important that if this is a dream of yours and it really matters to you, you have to be looking at like a 5 to 10 year timeline. You can't be, if you think you're going to get into an apparel business and within like 2 years, you're going to be like, cutting checks for yourself, like you're not, because you're going to have to make the upfront investment and then you're going to spend those next 2 years spending that money. And then you're going to finally get your product. And then it's going to take you selling that product to start getting that money back. And then from there, you have to reinvest that money in order to scale. So I think
Exactly.
it's like anything else, right? It's like, you have to want it for the right reasons, and you have to be invested in it for the long term. For us, if Amy and I were not so invested in the message and the meaning behind Give Her Courage, we would not have kept going. If we were just like, oh, we're college friends, let's do a cute apparel line together, this will be really fun, we would be out. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way. But her and I talk about it, and like we talk about it all the time. We're like, no, like this there's such a big why for us behind what we're doing, that like it's a no matter what, and it's kind of like it's a long range focus for us. And I think if you can have that mindset and mentality, it will help a lot.
Yeah, I think that's so important. We saw a lot of brands because of this really shut down and have to close doors in 2023. 2023 was a really tough year for the apparel and the fashion
Oh my
industry
gosh.
across the board, from freelancers to corporate doing tons of layoffs to people starting their own brands. And I'd love to get your opinion. Like, would you have any advice for some small fashion business owners who are struggling? I think the biggest thing right now is competing with big box brands. And just like you were saying, to be able to create your own quality apparel, you have to price it at a point where you can start to make a healthy margin. We talk about healthy margins a lot at the Business of Apparel. And I'd love if you have any advice and just how to kind of go out there and compete with big box brands, or any kind of marketing advice that you might have on how that price, indicates value.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a couple of things. So like what we found, and I'm not saying that it won't necessarily be the same formula for everyone. So like we finally got it down to like a science of like, okay, if we price a product at 4 times what it costs us, we can make a healthy margin. We can pay to advertise the product and still, make a profit on it. Right. So you have to figure out your formula, so that you have, an idea of that. For us, what has worked very well is building a large ambassador community. So we have hundreds of, girls that are in college that wear our bracelets, wear our hoodies, wear our, whatever. And in our stories, constantly modeling the gear and kind of showing out and all of those things. So I would say definitely build an ambassador program online. I think that is a huge way to get your brand out there and to get an army of people that are sharing your brand and modeling what you're creating and getting in front of their communities and create community. Because that's the other thing is like, it's not just, people don't just buy products now just for the product. They're buying the product because they like what the product signifies. And so I would say also look at, is there like a community that you're building around the brand? Is there a tribe? Is there an energy to what you're doing? That's going to help a lot with lifetime value. That's going to help a lot with ambassadorship, with getting other people to be sharing your brand. And as far as competing, with the big box, it's like, listen, it's a dog eat dog friggin' shark world out there. No matter what industry you're in, no matter what business you're in, the competition is fierce. But the thing is that like the cream rises to the top in every industry. And what I will say is that like, you have to want it bad enough. And if you're willing to put as much effort into selling and marketing your product as you put into creating it, like you'll find a way. But I mean, I would go back to the point I made earlier, a huge mistake that I made, which I have the skill to do it and I just didn't do it. And I should have, was from the moment we got our first samples, really going after those first couple wholesale deals. You don't need a lot of wholesale deals. You can partner with 1 or 2 brands. And guess what? You can be doing $100,000, $200,000, $500,000 deals with the big boxes, where instead of competing with the big boxes, they're paying you, right? And listen, there are problems with that as well. That is not a perfect world. Okay. So there's no silver bullet. Right. And that's just business in general. That's not apparel. That's business in general. But I would definitely say from the moment that you get your sample in hand and you're like, yes, this is my product I want to go to market with, you need to be spending every day getting in front of people, marketing that product, getting lunch meetings, getting in front of people, messaging people on LinkedIn, sending buyers samples. You just need to switch gears from being the artist to selling your product. And I think a lot of people never make that switch. So I would say, you can get a couple of those deals, and you just have to have the mindset and attitude to like persist, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, we talk a lot about wholesale, and, one of the things that can be really difficult about wholesale is, the margin percentage of that profit that you're already talking about, comes way down when you work for wholesale. And so being really smart upfront about your costing and making sure, like Kelly was saying, to research your MOQ, your minimum order quantity with your manufacturer to make sure that they are going to be able to work with you on all of those numbers is really crucial. We're taking a lot of people who are thinking about starting an apparel brand through the entire budget before we even put pencil to paper.
Super
and
smart.
Without that information, it's so hard to take that first step.
Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. And I think like when you're working with those quantities and when you're making decisions, you have to play chess, not checkers. You can't have individual thinking about the price per unit in that moment. You have to think to yourself, okay, this is the price per unit. I have to sell at 4x my cost in order to make money. If I'm selling to a big box, they're going to expect another 30 or 40% reduction on the price to sell that in that store. Can you even do that deal? Right. But that also goes back to what I said earlier is you need customers to find out about you in the big box, but love you because the product's amazing, and then go to your own website or go to wherever you're selling your product to order item number 2, item number 3. And that's why the quality of your product is so important, because in apparel, many times you might lose money on that first purchase, but you need to have that customer for life mentality, which is where then all of it is actually profit on the back end because you already paid to acquire that customer.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness. This was so good. Just all of this advice straight from your mouth, straight from your experience, I think is so valuable. We talk a lot about all of this stuff, but hearing it from someone else who has been through the trenches, I think is so amazing. So thank you so much for being here with us today, Kelly.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. And hey, listen, I get to share all the time, all the amazing and good things that we do. But I think sometimes it's even more important to share the mistakes that you've made, because it can really help people to skip over them, And so that's why I like to actually talk about this stuff, because I'm like, wow, this could really help someone to accelerate their journey. And listen to Rachel, guys, because she's giving you the goods. I mean, clearly you're everything I'm saying, you're already teaching them, right? It's just they're kind of hearing it from the opposite side. So thank you for having me. It was awesome being here.
Yeah. Can you tell us just a little bit, where can everybody find you and the Give Her Courage brand?
Yeah, definitely. Well, if you want to connect with me personally, Kelly Roach Official on Instagram, The Kelly Roach Show, you can go to thecourageousbrand.com or givehercourage.com. Our apparel line is on givehercourage.com, and you can see all of our fun gear and everything that we're up to. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you guys, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, thebusinessofapparel.com, where I do weekly trainings through my YouTube video channel, a weekly newsletter, blog articles, and so many more resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand. This podcast is produced by Box 7 Media, who I cannot speak highly enough of. If you're looking to start your own podcast, you can reach out to Jeremy at Box 7 Media on LinkedIn anytime.